All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Change Ready, which is an original series brought to you by Behind the Human and Malosi. It's a series where we are doing everything possible to future-proof your mind and thrive in an era of unprecedented change. And today we are speaking with Grace Vandecruze. She's an insurance investment banking expert with over 20 years of experience navigating high-pressure situations and rapid changes, specializing in mergers and acquisitions, financing, and corporate restructurings. I mean, no shortage of change in that bio. Right? Welcome to the show, Grace.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait. When we met up, I think a couple months ago, just as a quick little intro, and ever since then, I've been following your work, obviously, and preparing for this conversation. And I just feel really grateful and honored because you come to the table with such a diverse and beautiful experience base. I think, especially for this series, as we're really navigating, tough times in the sense of beautiful change and innovation, but also a lot of uncertainty and change, which we don't do super well with as humans. So I'd love to kick off though, because I feel like this might link well to the conversation. When we last spoke, you mentioned you were going to be participating in a talk or an innovation conference of some sort around change and technology at MIT. So I'd just love to know what that was all about and how did it go and any insights.
Yeah, sure. It went very well. I had an opportunity to be at MIT for an entire day. It's a collaboration between MIT and EY, and they brought together some board members. I sit on 5 corporate boards, and to talk about AI and the governance over AI. So as you know, that AI is a buzzword, and the insurance industry is one of the oldest industry in the country, and many companies have a legacy of over 100 years. So there's a tremendous amount of pain points and a tremendous amount of opportunity to innovate, and the industry is doing exactly that. What we find in the AI conference is that the AI breakthrough in the insurance industry has not yet happened, but it's definitely in development. Okay. There've been some innovation around the fringes, but you will find that when the customer experience changes drastically, and the industry is highly regulated. Each state has its own regulation, and privacy and protection of customer data is paramount. So with an industry with those guideposts, innovation have to be done in a very methodical, careful manner. So the industry is working diligently to do exactly that.
So they must be, at this point, just experiencing probably a little bit more surface level AI tools for just, I suspect, everyday productivity and efficiency and so forth. But to your point, it hasn't hit that moment of, wow, things are now changing, for the good. Exactly. So how do people feel about that, Grace?
Well, I think people feel that the industry has still made a lot of progress. For example, in some of the boards I sit on, we measure time to pay claims and see where the efficiencies are. There's some goals, some guidelines and deadlines, and we can see time to pay claims, just to give one benchmark, is improving drastically over time. And so that gives us a sense that the machine learning, all of the agile workforce within the industry, and some of the AI being implemented is really taking some traction.
Okay.
But there's so many pain points, not only with the claims, but with the premiums, with customer acquisitions. So it's the industry looking to how can we just innovate from start to finish.
Okay. That's a great question. I like that. What are you seeing, and whether it's that experience with the group of individuals you're hanging out with, or in other situations, what are you seeing from leaders in the sense of being proactive with their minds around being able to kind of put themselves let's just say past the breakthrough moment or at the breakthrough moment, and be able to ready themselves and then their teams to handle that level of disruption? Because that's, I imagine, for employees and teams of these massive insurance companies, there's probably, well, there's for sure uncertainty, and there's probably a lot of fear around it as well.
Yes, but there's also a tremendous amount of opportunity around it.
Of course.
Leaders are looking at this is an inflection point. It's a moment we have to seize, and we have to lead, and lead sometimes differently in order to get different results. That the status quo is no longer sufficient. It's no
Mm.
longer adequate to get us to the next level. So what they're doing is, because of there's so much change going on in the industry, and I always think of the Jack Welch quote: "If the change from outside exceeds the change from within, the end is near."
Oh
So
yeah, that's such a good one.
wants the end to be near. So what we see coming in is this tremendous growth mindset where, from board members, leadership teams, employees are retraining and saying, look, there's some technology and some changes that we have to equip ourselves with the knowledge of. We have to understand how to use those. We have to start bringing in proof of concepts. And more, I see some of the most important leaders at the table are the chief information officer. And that officer working together in every aspect of the organization to bring change. But the other very refreshing change that I see is at the table having a wider collection of experts coming in within and outside of the company to solve a major issue,
Okay.
particularly around technology. And I think it's innovating for an organization to do that. And it is bringing about change.
I'd love to connect this to a bit of some of your personal story as well around, because I remember you sharing this in our first conversation, but just the link between you climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and all these other mountains and so forth. And because as soon as we started talking about the topic, I could see you kind of lighting up. It's like, oh yeah, I've been in a situation, well, those business situations, but also in a physical situation and mental situation that you felt prepared you for kind of the world that we're in right now. So why don't you provide a little bit of context?
Sure. So I've had the opportunity to climb over 25 mountain peaks on 3 different continents. And when I started climbing mountains, I was doing this as a challenge to myself. I got an invitation from one of my former professors at the Wharton Business School, where I got an MBA. And he had the vision. His name is Michael Useem. He had the vision of bringing together leaders from around the world into an environment that was completely outside of their comfort zone,
Okay.
with the understanding that they would hike and climb during the day, and at night have a bonfire discussion on a relevant business issue.
Wow.
I know. When I first got this invitation, I could not believe it. It was an invitation like I've never read before. And I thought, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to network with leaders across industry, have the opportunity to be in a different part of the world and learn a different culture. And I have an ability to discuss relevant business issues with very intelligent minds that I can learn and gain some knowledge from. So I decided to do this. And this was back in 2004, and which was not long after 9/11.
Mm.
And 9/11 was one of my eye-opening experiences, where at the end of that day, I really promised myself to live life more fully, to take more meaningful vacations. So here I am looking at this one of a kind invitation, and it was to climb Bhutan, in the country of Bhutan, climbing up to 20,000 feet in elevation. It's 8 days up, 6 days down, so 14 days out of work to do this. But interesting at the time, I was managing director, the first woman, the first African American to be promoted at a Wall Street firm. And I had already seen the best version of me, but I wanted to challenge myself to the next best version of
Sure.
myself. And I knew that meant stepping into territories, whether literally or figuratively, that were new to me. And even if I had to step shaky, I knew I had to trust Grace to challenge herself to that next level. And because I had that desire to do so, I decided I'm going to do this.
Mm.
And so I embarked on the journey. I learned a lot about Bhutan. And one of the things just about the culture I wanted to point out that was an eye opener for me was instead of Bhutan measuring GDP like the rest of the world, gross domestic production, as a measure of success, they measure GNH, gross national happiness.
Mm.
Yes, there is a country in the world that
Wow.
actually polls its citizens and measure their well-being and their happiness. And they use that as a benchmark for the success of the country.
Wow.
So that was a eureka moment for us in terms of considering well-being as an integral part of our lives. So back to some of the lessons that I learned climbing a mountain. It's interesting because mountaineers are like engineers. They're very precise in planning steps and elevations and tools and resources. But I've learned very quickly that when you start climbing a mountain, you have to be prepared to be disrupted at each and every step, that your terrain is constantly evolving and changing, and uncertainty and change is your way of life.
Okay.
And learning how to navigate that is going to be determine your success or your failure, your ability to reach the summit, or the fact that you have to return back without accomplishing the goal.
How did you prepare for it? Like, were you climbing? I'm assuming you weren't climbing before.
No, and I was the least likely climber when I was 8 years old. I had a serious accident and my leg was completely hanging by a limb,
Oh,
literally.
wow.
And because my leg was so detached from my body, they had planned for it to be amputated. When through medical intervention, I was able to keep my leg through various pins that kept it together. So I grew up constantly falling and
Okay.
never had a great deal of confidence in my physical ability. I excelled academically, and that got me through high school very well, but I was not considered an athlete. So I always consider myself the least likely mountain climber. But it also gives me a sense of humility. So,
Yeah.
how did I train? I did do a combination of cardio and strength training. But what everyone tends to ignore in asking me about training is what I believe is essential for a mountain climber, and it's mindset.
Yeah.
It's mindset that I think is 99% of getting you to the top. When the terrain is completely dark and you're in a storm and the sound of the storm is louder than a New York City subway
Mm.
station, and you cannot see your next step. You're just harnessed into the person in front of you, and the person behind you is harnessed in. That's where you really get introspective. And the strength and the reason for you being there becomes critical. And one of the lessons I learned from mountain climbing is in Kilimanjaro, the guides would always tell us poli poli. And poli poli means step by step. But
Okay.
the deeper meaning is measure each step carefully before you take it. When you
Okay.
take your step, remember that you're A next step is your best step. Make your next step your very best step and take it with focus and determination. So when you have this great big mountain and it's insurmountable and it's in the dark and you're tired and you're like, well, where do I go next? You just have to worry about your next step. It really is a step-by-step journey because every step involves its own level of pivoting, but it's so important to focus on your next step and just your next step in that moment.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, there's so many obvious parallels here in terms, especially. I mean, not even change, just living life and being in the business world in general, right? Just
Yes.
maintaining focus and, like you said, measuring those next steps. And I think the other thing I was hearing too in just your description is having this level of trust, of trust in yourself, but then trust in, in this case, the people in front of you, also leading, the way, or your group members and so forth. What did you? I'm still really fascinated by. I mean, there's a fascination of climbing the mountain, or mountains, I should say,
Yes.
but then there's the other element of then at one point coming down as a group, or I'm assuming at different various maybe base camps or something, where you're having like business conversations. What was that like?
It was amazing because we were all from different industries, different companies, and just to hear the different perspectives, to hear businesses that is done in Australia versus India versus United States, and to have that level of discussions where it's just in depth, sort of like Chatham Bar's rules,
Yeah,
conversation with the group was highly enlightening for me. It really served as a basis for encouragement for me because one of the things I find as a woman in the corporate ladder, it could be very, very isolating.
mm,
And it's important for us to really be careful who we're harnessing ourselves in next to,
yeah,
who is part of our team. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at our company. I always feel as if part of our success is that each of us need a personal board of directors. We're CEO of our lives, whether we're entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. And it's so important to have those guides around you that can give you insights, who are smarter than you and have some experience that
yeah.
can significantly enhance your life and your career.
I agree. That's something, I mean, in a lot of the mental fitness work that I do with teams, we talk about this as well and thinking of it in terms of seasons. Like, what are you training for right now? What's the topic? Whether, maybe it's a product launch. In this case, we're talking about a lot of disruption and change. So in this case, then, you know, who can you surround yourself with? I mean, if you can do that physically, wonderful. But if you can't, I mean, there's so many other resources. Like, who do you want to learn from? Are they doing different podcasts, or have they written books? Like, just to your point, like surrounding yourself you can surround yourself with a mix of in person and virtual board of directors, essentially, for yourself, that
Mhm.
can just catapult your mind to the right place.
Yes, because we hear it all the time. The quality of our lives is based on the quality of our relationships. And
Yeah,
if we harness those relationships, I think it makes a big difference.
yeah. I'm really fascinated with again this concept of taking people out into just different environments and extreme environments. And maybe it's not climbing, Mount Kilimanjaro and others, but there can be other versions of that where we bring together leaders that are at the forefront of some of this change and leading it and so forth, so that because I suspect your mind is at a completely different place.
It is in a completely different place because one of the premise of this entire program is that in order for leadership leaders to build their skills, they have to be outside of their comfort zone. And nothing is more outside of your comfort zone than when you're standing 20,000 feet in elevation, looking down at clouds
Yeah.
and freezing.
Yeah. Come on, Grace. You weren't comfortable up there?
Temperature you'd never expected before, with a terrain that looks drastically different than what you're used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always have this sense when I'm climbing and I'm just focused on that step by step, the poly walk, it becomes more of a spiritual walk. It becomes a spiritual journey for me because you go deep within.
Yeah.
You're transforming yourself with each and every step. But that transformation is not quite felt until after you've completed the journey. You've got a chance to look back and you say, well, I am a different person before the climb than after the climb.
Sure.
There's a level of confidence and courage that I have gained with every step. Quite frankly, I don't know if I would have started my own business, which was one of the most bold move I've made, if I did not climb mountains before.
Sure.
Because mountain climbing just brought out a level of courage, confidence in me, and conviction that I did not have before.
I can only imagine. I mean, I feel like it's going to be in my head now. But you must voice poly poly quite often in many situations, right? In the background.
I do.
Yeah.
I speak to audiences about this, and I get so many feedback about how great and inspiring and transformative the talk was. But at the end, everyone says poly poly.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Wow. What are some of your non-negotiable practices that, whether you thought about those climbing or have kind of been along your side starting businesses and advising others and whatnot, like the things that keep your mind clear and healthy when things get tough?
Oh my goodness, that is an amazing question. My biggest non-negotiable, I think my main one, is never betray yourself.
Ooh, tell me
Never.
more.
I would betray myself if I were to take on a partner that did not share my values, or
Yeah.
take clients that did not share my values. I would betray myself. I would betray myself if I did not focus and have a space for self-care and preserving my well-being so that I can really present from an overflowing cup to my clients and friends and to the world. I would betray myself if I don't forgive myself for the things I didn't know. And I was well meaning, but
Yeah.
I got totally wrong, or the people I misjudged.
Yeah.
So, so I practice self-forgiveness because I think if I forgive myself, which is I'm hardest on myself, then it's so easy to extend that forgiveness to others.
Of course.
And, in business, we don't talk about it, but I see how people holding on to grudges can lead to a very toxic work
Yeah.
and controlling environment. So I really do want to serve from a healthy place. I'd like to inspire from a healthy place and give back from a healthy place.
Well, I support that message. That's for sure. How do you practically do some of what you mentioned? Do you have a journaling practice or a meditation or something like that when you're, because these are all, I
Yes.
see like a flow of, okay, never, what does it look like to betray myself, right? I think that's a good journaling exercise for any of us to go through. So then, when you're faced with those moments, like, oh, you have a little micro pause there, but what's your flow?
Yes. So my flow is to begin the day with meditation.
Okay.
And I
What do you
need,
do? How long do you do it? We
Right.
get real
So,
practical here.
yes. So I need the stillness before I jump up and start with the day and have the noise of the day come
Sure.
with me. So what I do is I get up to meditation. Literally, I when I wake up, I try to stay in that stillness
Okay.
and reflectiveness, and really stay quiet and meditate. I have done a number of meditation classes, and I've over the years I've tried guided meditation. I've taken TM classes, so I do have my mantra from my guide,
Yeah.
and so I practice that. TM is about 20 minutes,
Yeah.
but there are days when if I have the time, I'll go on for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and just spend my time meditating. It has served me tremendously and gotten me through some very stressful days where I could manage them and navigate those difficult places because I had the inner strength and I had the inner stillness and the inner confidence.
Mhm. I'd love to ask, because this is a real life scenario. I find myself within CEO groups or associations of some sort, and usually they're nice, kind of intimate, like 10 to 12 people, advisory groups that meet quarterly. And
Mhm.
I'll come in with some mental fitness, and normally I'd say 90% of the audience like is very open, and then we really get into the practices. But there's always a couple people that I'll hear from the feedback later, and the organizers just saying, yeah, well, there was one that said something to the effect of, like, we didn't really need to do, like, I don't do breath work, or I don't do this. I don't. So I'm curious, because I mean, you and I know this, because people, the best of the best in the world are doing these practices, whether they're talking about them or not, they're doing something. How do you approach the subject of meditation to, I'm going to do air quotes here, of busy leaders and high profile leaders leading big companies and so forth?
So I have a perspective that will encourage you. So I'm on 5 corporate boards. Two of my boards manage over $1 trillion of assets.
Okay.
They are not insignificant boards.
Sure.
And I have been doing board work for almost uh, 10 years. And so I view my boards as my evolution board service 2.0.
Okay.
When I first started board service, no one talked about wellness in boards.
Mm,
COVID changed that. COVID changed it completely.
yeah.
In employee benefits, in employee surveys, in employees engagement, we talk about wellness from a board level on down. And that to me is encouraging.
Yeah.
Companies have caught up. If your employees are not well, it will impact the bottom line. And
Yeah,
it's
for
in
sure.
everyone's best interest to have a culture, to have an employee base that supports wellness.
Yeah.
So it's encouraged. And then, secondly, the stress levels of our leaders are getting higher and higher. And I don't see anything in the horizon which says life will get easier next year.
No, no. Well, hence the whole reason why we're trying to fire up this podcast series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And we need to face life with the tools and resources to really navigate a course in a very meaningful and successful way.
Yeah.
So we talk about it, and
Okay.
and and it's true that not every board member, every CEO has a same level of commitment to meditation. But I see many of them doing other things. Some might be emphasizing prayer more. Some might
Yeah.
be emphasizing, more spa days And but everyone is very much in tune to how do I create a balance in which I can approach work from a much healthier mindset.
Yeah. I think that's the key and this is where there's a big parallel between what I would call mental fitness and physical fitness, that, you know, if you don't like to run, it doesn't rule out all of exercise, right? There are a million different things you can do. And I think it's the same thing with mental fitness. Like some, meditation might be a scary thing for them, or they've tried it and for whatever reason doesn't work. Uh, it's kind of weird to say that meditation doesn't work, but you know what I mean? I mean, that's not their thing, but there are so many other, to your point. I mean, you could just take a long walk in nature or in silence, or like you said, a bit of a spa, like something. I think the through line is something to still the mind in some capacity. Like that's what I hear the most in studying
Mhm.
people of today, like yourself, as well as those have, the long past, like the Maya Angelou's of the world and Marcus Aurelius and so forth. And they're all doing these things.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, Stoicism. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, also critical, also important, and even more so. And I see that becoming a major element in the tools for success that corporations are no longer ignoring. And I think leaders that are forward thinking and have a growth mindset, they're incorporating that as well.
Well,
You
that's
know,
a beautiful way. I love it. Continue.
yes, also interesting because I travel so much. I didn't notice it before, but some airports I see have prayer rooms.
Yeah.
Airports have yoga rooms. You know,
Yeah.
it's very you know great to see. It's enhanced. I think it enhances the difficult process of traveling. Traveling is becoming more and more stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's encouraging. And I think it's just, I mean, it's necessary. Like I don't, because we can see it in the mental health data out there. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the population is not doing well. And to your point, and I think what we're all saying, there's no shortage. There are just more events. There's more change. There's more uncertainty. So, I think we can zoom out and just accept the reality that this is the environment that we're in, and there's a lot of really great opportunity there. But we do have to give ourselves the tools. And
Yes.
I think and I think we owe it to ourselves to do that. And there are so many different things that you can do individually that then the ripple effect of feeling good and your mind, being clear, then all of a sudden you're seeing what others can't see, and your decisions and the way that you show up for yourself and your team members. I mean, it's endless in the sense of a loop that continues to give back.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I really thank you, Grace, for sharing a lot of your practices, and of course, just all the various insights that you've picked up along the way, especially with climbing and those parallels that you've got. I'm gonna definitely look up that professor. I'm gonna get the name at the end again because I think that's brilliant. His approach to all of this. Um, and thank you for leading the cause and allowing people to experience that there are other ways to operate in business and be very successful, but also be very healthy at the same time. So important.
You're most welcome.